Today, a kilogram of the highest grade white gold caviar sells for over $100,000, sitting on tasting menus for billionaires and royalty. But a little over a century ago, those exact same eggs were shoveled onto plates and handed out for free in dingy American saloons. The producer of these eggs is the sturgeon. This living fossil has been swimming through rivers and oceans for 250 million years, outlasting the extinction event that wiped out the dinosaurs. Through asteroid impacts and ice ages, the physical makeup of this ancient animal remained completely stable against all geological odds. The salted cured roe we eat today tastes exactly the same as it did millennia ago. Since the food hasn't changed, that six-figure price tag has absolutely nothing to do with taste. The financial value of caviar is driven entirely by a relentless, repeating historical cycle of supply, demand, and manufactured scarcity. In the Middle Ages, the Volga River system in Russia was so packed with sturgeon that their eggs were cheaper than butter. When the Russian Orthodox Church required strict fasting periods where meat was forbidden, peasant families relied heavily on caviar as a convenient, everyday food source. That widespread access ended in 1554. Ivan the Terrible conquered the regions bordering the Caspian Sea and claimed the sturgeon catch as an imperial monopoly. He demanded hundreds of tons of the fish be delivered to Moscow every year as tribute. This map of the Caspian Sea radiating toward Western Europe illustrates a biological bottleneck. Without refrigeration, salted eggs spoil within days, creating a shrinking freshness radius. Reaching London or Paris required surviving a brutal gauntlet, making fresh caviar an extraordinary display of wealth. The highest circles of European royalty developed an obsession with caviar, solely because the extreme difficulty of keeping it from rotting made it an exclusive prize. By the 1870s, immigrants settling near the Delaware River realized the waters were teeming with massive wild Atlantic sturgeon, some growing nearly 20 feet long. Entrepreneurs quickly commercialized the catch. They flooded the domestic market with so much cheap caviar that local bartenders started giving it away for free, using the salty eggs to make their patrons thirsty enough to order another beer. This global trade loop shows an international economic fraud. American fisheries exported 90% of their cheap caviar to Europe, where it was repackaged in premium tins labeled Russian caviar, then shipped right back to the United States at a massive markup. The wealthiest elites in Western society were paying exorbitant prices for what was literally a local New Jersey bar snack. The prestige they were buying was entirely manufactured by a label on a tin. That era of endless abundance collapsed abruptly. Wild sturgeon take up to 20 years to reach sexual maturity and reproduce. This slow biological cycle could not withstand industrial commercial fishing, and by 1910, the American sturgeon populations were fished to near extinction. As the supply vanished, the economics reversed. The extreme scarcity drove prices skyrocketing, cementing caviar once again as a rare luxury. In 1920s Paris, two Armenian brothers named Melkum and Musheg Petrosyan capitalized on this new shortage. They purchased caviar directly from the Soviet Union and aggressively marketed it to the wealthy socialites hungry for exotic glamour. The Petrosyans knew they needed to justify the soaring cost, so they introduced specific high society rituals. They educated chefs to serve the eggs with mother-of-pearl spoons to avoid metallic tastes, and they paired the dish exclusively with champagne, turning consumption into a reverent theatrical experience. Decades later, relentless poaching, industrial pollution, and the total collapse of Soviet management devastated the remaining Caspian Sea sturgeon populations. By the early 21st century, a single kilogram of wild beluga caviar hit an absolutely astronomical $100,000. When true ecological scarcity hit, marketers used these invented dining rituals to frame the exorbitant price tag as a privilege reserved only for the ultra-elite. The global market remained locked in this state of extreme rarity until the late 1990s, when China began pouring massive investments into sturgeon aquaculture. This timeline chart reveals China's financial barrier, feeding fish in glacial meltwater for 15 years before a single return, but they made the bet anyway. Cracking this cycle means China now produces over 600 tons annually, over half the global supply. By mastering the complex biology of the sturgeon, these commercial farms broke the scarcity barrier and forced the global luxury market back into a state of abundance. The immediate economic consequence of this farming revolution was a dramatic collapse in price. Today, a perfectly respectable tin of high-quality sturgeon roe can be purchased for around $40. As prices dropped, culture shifted. Gen Z abandons stuffy Parisian dining rituals, opting instead for viral caviar bumps at house parties and racing events. Through all of this, the sturgeon remains entirely indifferent to human status symbols. It survived the ice ages, it survived asteroid impacts, and it continues to swim exactly as it did 250 million years ago. The physical eggs have not changed a bit over the last 2 millennia. The perceived value of caviar, and our entire concept of luxury, exists entirely in the stories we tell ourselves when something is hard to get.